This is how I got a $10,000 deal in 60 seconds.
Hey, what's up, everyone? And thank you for dropping into another episode on the Path to Freedom podcast. Today, I'm joined by John Nemo, founder, CEO of Nemo Media Group. John, appreciate you being here. I've been looking forward to this. You are quite the personality, so always a lot of fun to talk with, but also full of knowledge across a variety of topics, but in particularly marketing, branding, prospecting, something that's important to, anyone that's in business for themselves or even considering getting into business for themselves. And, you're a successful entrepreneur in your own right. So a lot of things that we can talk about, but really appreciate you being here.
Man, I'm just honored, Wes, to be in the presence of the 2009 social media intern for the Hilton Garden Inn. I mean, does it get any bigger online? Does it get any bigger? Ladies and gentlemen, do you know who you're listening to? This guy. You're the best, man. I'm so excited to be here.
Assuming anyone's even listening to this other than my mother.
You did good, Mom. You did good.
Yeah, I don't even know if my mom knows that I was briefly the social media intern for the Hilton Garden Inn, but yeah, talk about a blast from the past. And a short-lived claim to fame of mine. But
I had to do it because obviously we know each other through all our LinkedIn stuff. And of course, I'm scouring Wes's LinkedIn profile for anything funny I can. And I'm like going back to his first job right out of school. So that's where that reference comes in for those that are like,
I can't believe
why are you randomly citing things from Wes's career? Because I'm a LinkedIn nerd. That's what I do.
That's right. Yeah, I can't believe that's even on my LinkedIn profile. But yeah, for a little context, John and I connected, I think late last year, late 2022, and he reached out to me via LinkedIn. If anyone listening spends much time on LinkedIn, that it's full of people that are reaching out, sliding into your DMs, trying to pitch something, right? And so I think most of us are pretty numb to that at this point. And so to get anyone's attention through LinkedIn, you've got to, hook them in somehow or another. And I just remember that, your approach was unique in my eyes, and your message resonated with me. I don't often do this, when people reach out on LinkedIn, but I said, you know what, let's set up a call. And so anyways, I'm a client of John's company, Nemo Media Group, and they help me out with my presence and branding and content on LinkedIn. And I do a fair amount of prospecting there for the franchise consulting work that I do with Path to Freedom. And it's been really good, and I'll share some more kind of examples as we talk today, I'm sure. But I've worked with other agencies, I guess you could say, that specialize in LinkedIn. And for me, this has been a totally different experience, better experience. You guys have I think, unique approach to it. So with that, maybe just kind of give us a quick overview. What is Nemo Media Group, and who do you guys help, and what is kind of your area of expertise?
Yeah, thank you. Basically, we're a done-for-you LinkedIn lead generation agency. And so we work with any type of small business owner, coach, consultant, entrepreneur that wants to use LinkedIn to get leads. And so that's the very short answer. How we do that is like we could spend hours on it. So, but yeah, loving it. Have been doing it since 2012, since I quit my day job. And so that's a fun story too we can get into.
Well, I'd love to hear some of that story, and we'll definitely talk more about, why is LinkedIn the platform that, you guys really focus on, and, more about the types of clients that you're able to help, and who should be considering, leveraging a platform like LinkedIn. But Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more of the backstory and, how you got to the point of, leaving your day job and starting your own business, because you have an interesting, background prior to starting your own business from what I know. So walk us through a little bit of that story if you don't mind.
Yeah, it all started March 28, 1975, the day I was born. March 29, I didn't do much, just kind of slept in. No, just
Yeah.
I won't go that far back.
Yeah.
All right. So
Maybe.
basically, I went to college and got a degree that does not exist anymore. That's how much of a dinosaur I am. Print journalism. Remember newspapers, Wes? They printed them. Watch movies from the 80s. You can see the little paper boy throwing them out.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I grew up as the son of two English teachers. So I love storytelling, books, writing. That's why I went into journalism. And so I worked for the Associated Press and the Arizona Republic and some big newspapers. I loved it. Wrote 7 books, reporter, writer. And then I ended up, we have 3 crazy boys. And so early on, I was like Mr. Mom, staying at home, doing all that. And then my wife eventually was like, I want to come home, go get a real job. And so then I worked for trade associations, one of which was debt collectors, everybody's favorite people. You know what, though?
That's
Some of the nicest people on earth are debt collectors. What's that?
That's where your prospecting skills come from. If you
get
people on the phone as a debt collector.
Yeah. And what's so funny is such a misunderstood industry. There's some of the nicest people in the world, soccer moms, everybody else, debt collectors. And anyway, worked for them for a trade association. Then I worked for a nursing trade association, Minnesota Nurses. Had to handle the biggest nursing strike in U.S. history, 10,000 nurses. So that was bananas. Anyway, in 2012, I had kind of this epiphany. It was a meeting about men in tights. So I was sitting in a meeting, and the Minnesota Nurses Union, it was also a labor union. So it did lots of they want to do lots of action and like street theater. And at the time they were protesting this bill, this Robin Hood tax, like the rich should pay more in taxes and we should be like Robin Hood. And so I'm the PR guy, 20-year journalism career. And they're like, we want you to plan a street theater scene with Robin Hood characters, men in tights and fake trees, and do a press release. And I'm like, is this what it's come to, Wes? Is this me for the next 30 years?
I was going to say, God, were you behind that idea?
What's that?
Were you behind that strategy?
No. I was like, there's more to it, right? And I always say this entrepreneurial itch. And this is where LinkedIn's going to come into the story. So I had a safe job. I mean, I worked for a labor union. You cannot get fired if you work for a labor union. It's impossible, right? I'd have to stand on top of the building and scream, I hate unions. And even then I'd have a grievance and I'd be fine. I had a safe 6-figure job. I could have coasted for 30 more years. And I was just like, you know what? I want to be home more. Similar to you, I wanted freedom, right? I had a young family. I had 3 young boys under the age of 10. My wife was home. And so unlike you, I'm not good at planning. And I quit that job with $60,000 in credit card debt and one client who was going to pay me like 15 grand to build a website. And I didn't know how to build a website. And I just said yes. So I left the job. I had all this debt. I had one client, enough money for basically 30 days. And I was like, I figured it out. And what it was LinkedIn. I knew back then, because I'd used LinkedIn to get jobs. And this is 2012. I saw something with that platform that other people weren't doing, especially back then.
Yeah.
This is basically Google for B2B leads. Like, everyone's on LinkedIn. You can make these lists of your ideal prospects.
Mm-hmm.
I saw an opportunity where, okay, I got enough money to jump, and I got to Google how to build a website, which I figured out. Yeah. That was Nemo Media Group. I had a wobbly folding card table and a soft pretzel box that my computer was on. It was very, very high-end stuff, Wes. Very big,
At one point when you were reaching out to me, there was a picture of that desk with the pretzel box and like your computer on top of it or whatever. So yeah, I mean, it's such a good entrepreneurial story, and I think very insightful of you to realize the potential of LinkedIn. Because I mean, when did LinkedIn even launch as a platform? Clearly it was around in 2009, or maybe not.
It launched, I think, in like 03, 04. I got on it, I
Okay.
think, in 06. And it
Okay.
grew and grew and grew. And the fun ending to that story of quitting the day job, within 90 days of being on my own, using LinkedIn for leads, I did 6 figures in sales, like just
Wow.
on that wobbly folding cart table, just from random people I hit up on LinkedIn in the DMs. So that was the opening for me to go, oh, yeah,
And you
okay,
were
this is going to work.
selling, yeah, you were selling like website
Yeah, marketing
design
services,
services,
right?
marketing services. Yeah.
Yeah, press releases,
Okay. Yeah.
websites, videos, anything I could sell. And so that led into all these different lessons with LinkedIn. The biggest one being, the riches are in the niches. And
Mm,
so I had one client who was a debt collector at the time, right? That was from that old trade association. So I
yeah.
thought, well, this is what I would say as we get into some of the tips I want to share. 99% of LinkedIn profiles still are set up the wrong way.
Mm,
They're set up the way the platform originally intended, which was an online resume. Hey, if I want to get recruited, I want to tell people what my work is. So if you look at most LinkedIn profiles, they're set up writing about yourself in the third person, like Wes Barefoot, CEO, path to freedom. Wes has done such famous things as this accomplishment and this and this and this and this.
yeah.
And it's you write about yourself like you're a pro athlete, third person.
Yeah.
The only problem is, other than Wes's mom, no one cares. Nobody cares about you, man. Nobody
It's
cares about
boring.
your resume. What they care about, and this, at the time I launched my company, I was reading what's become my Bible for business, which is How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
And he has this great line from 1936 that he wrote, and he said, your ideal client, your ideal customer does not care about you. They do not care about me. They care about themselves, morning,
Mhm.
noon, and after dinner. That's all they care about. And so what I did, and this is where we can get into a practical tip for LinkedIn, with my profile, I immediately made it what I call client facing. So instead of being the resume, John Nemo, CEO, Nemo Media Group, I changed my LinkedIn headline under my name to debt collection marketing services, debt
Mm,
collection websites, so that when someone got an invite from me on LinkedIn, again, the riches are in the niches. I use LinkedIn's database to only reach out to debt collectors, lists
right.
I built. They
Yep.
get an invite from a guy whose headline doesn't say CEO Nemo Media Group. It says debt collection marketing services. Oh, I'm a debt collector. I might need marketing services. I'll accept the invite. What do you got going on?
Right. It's
Yeah.
they see how you might be able to help them versus, like you said, just kind of your resume, because no one does care about that, but they care about themselves. So if you can kind of hit them in the face with, this is what I do and this is how I could be in a position to help you, you've at least got their attention versus them, scrolling right past, or not accepting the connection request.
Now, had I been the Hilton Garden Inn social media intern in 2009, I mean, you lead with that, obviously. But if you don't have that,
Clearly. Yeah.
so it worked like crazy, because again, here's the other thing. I have a whole template, and we'll link to it in the show notes, but I call it the ultimate profile template, right? It's basically a fill in the blank for your LinkedIn profile. Now, the reason your LinkedIn profile matters so much is if you Google Wes Barefoot, it's one of the first results. Google yourself after this interview. For anyone watching, Google your name. Your LinkedIn profile is on page 1 at the top.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. It
And whether
is.
you like it or not, people are going to look at that and try to figure out if you're legitimate, right? So even if you contact them through Facebook, or they come in through your website, or they meet you at a trade show, they're going to Google you. And what's your profile? Does it look poverty, or does it look like client facing, polished? And so one of the key things I figured out early on, to your point, Wes, was the first line of my LinkedIn profile, the about section. Here's one sentence people can use. You'd say, what I do, in all capital letters, colon, I help, insert the name of your audience, get 2 to 3 benefits they want by providing my service. So what I do, I help this audience get these benefits by providing this service. So for me, back in 2012, it said, what I do, I help debt collectors, increase sales, reduce complaints, and generate more leads by providing customized debt collection industry specific marketing services.
Yeah.
How I do it, I leverage my experience in the industry to understand, and blah, blah, blah. And then it just was all about how I help them get what they want. And what happened was, people accept the invite, look at your profile, and are like, oh, cool, you can help me. And that's where it really got good. Look at this fat. Whoa, look at this profile.
Yeah. See, I figured it'd be good to give kind of a visual and some examples. So, I mean, you guys completely redid my profile when we started working together. And I remember being a little bit surprised how much emphasis the team put on the profile and rewriting it. So I mean, everything from the header picture to, the title that's going to show
Mm-hmm.
up. So, look, exactly what John just described, kind of how I help the people that I'm able to help,
Mm-hmm.
right there. And then, this is
What I
exactly
do.
what he was saying. And you've got this whole kind of formula, right, that you guys have developed over the years that you're really able to almost, I don't want to say plug and play, because one of the things that you and your team have done that's been so impressive to me is you've spent huge amounts of time with me, one-on-one, asking a lot of questions. And I mean, we've got probably how many hours worth of Zoom calls that are recorded where
Yeah.
essentially just kind of interviewing me and talking to me, and understanding not just what I do, but how I do it, and how maybe I do it differently than other franchise consultants that are out there, my personal story, understanding kind of my voice and how I talk. So I don't necessarily want to say plug and play, but you've got this kind of formula that you're able to take any client that you work with and, use that structure to input, their personal information and services into it. So yeah, I mean, I remember being pretty surprised, but also impressed with just how much time and emphasis your team put on redoing my profile.
Yeah, and it's really comes down to understanding what makes you unique, different, and better. So like what makes Wes unique, different, and better. And so your profile, your LinkedIn content, your messages have to really say, why is Wes different than the other 5 gajillion franchise consultants that I see, right? And so for you, Wes, it was your story. It was like, okay, well, I had this corporate role. I worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I really learned, okay, that's going to kind of be capped and limited how far I can go on the corporate ladder. I want more freedom. I want time with my family. So then I end up going to work for a franchise company. I start selling franchises. I start learning that world, like, oh, it's more than McDonald's. And then I get into it and I buy franchises and I run franchises and I make every mistake you can think of as a first-time franchise owner. I've,
True.
done it all. And now I'm taking all the lessons I've learned over the last decade, and now I'm helping other people kind of make the same journey. And
Yeah.
so it's like, for you, that makes you unique, different, and better. Plus your whole approach is you're very much, I'm an educator, I'm a facilitator, I'm not a hard charging, like, I mean, this is why you have a podcast every week that you're educating people with.
Yeah.
Like, you're not just like, get on the phone, I'm going to hammer you with a franchise. Like,
Yeah.
you're very, that was like, and so that goes into your story, right? And so
Yeah.
when people are thinking about their LinkedIn profile, yes, there's the fill in the blank part of what I do, who I serve, services I provide, audiences I help. But the most important part, your biggest advantage in the marketplace is you. What makes you
Yeah.
unique? What's your story? What's your journey? What would I get working with you that I wouldn't get with another franchise consultant, right? Well, with Wes, I would get somebody that they've literally bought and run franchises.
Yeah.
Oh, that's different. He's not just some guy that says he's a consultant and took a class. Like, he actually is in the trenches doing it.
Yeah.
Because there are franchise consultants who are like, I'm one.
Yeah,
I signed up
definitely.
and I'm one. I know it. And they're like, but you never run one.
There are franchise consultants that are franchisees to be a franchise consultant. So
Yeah.
they bought a franchise to help other people buy franchises.
You know who I want to build my house? A guy that's built his own house by hand.
Yeah,
I don't want a guy
right.
who like took an online course about how to build houses.
Yeah,
So that's like
exactly.
your advantage, is like, dude, I have, and then like your story is so good because you have two of the most random franchises no one would think of, like insulation and shelving.
Yeah,
And it's like, well, that sounds dumb. And you're like, no, but here's why.
right.
It's scalable. I don't have to go, I'm not crawling through attics, man. Like, I have a
Oh,
team, but it's a scalable business and it has all these advantages. And I get to play into my strengths of client service and, networking and marketing and relationship building. And I have models where I get referrals, and it's like, oh, okay. Like there's 4,000 different concepts. It's not a McDonald's for everybody. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's where on LinkedIn, the more you can just kind of document who you are and what you've done and put it in a client facing way of how it's going to help someone else with your profile, your messaging, et cetera, that's what people respond to. Because kind of to your point earlier, Wes, everyone on LinkedIn is inundated. Like everyone's getting all these spam
Yeah.
messages. I got
Yeah.
one the other day, Wes, that said, "Hey, John, I saw your profile. Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And I'm like, "I've written 7 books. It's in my header. It's in my header,
Like, I
Wes.
can't stop thinking about writing books.
I'm hitting my head with the book."
Yeah, I mean, there's that, and I think the other key is like you got to be consistent with it too, right? I mean, if you're just doing it every now and then, you're probably not gonna move the needle all that much.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's all types of, I guess, studies or statistics out there of how many times you need to get in front of someone before it's really going to resonate. Whatever the number is, it's usually more than once, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if they're consistently seeing you and content or information that you're putting out, and it's coming from a place of, hey, I'm just adding value, I'm not really asking for anything in return, and you're kind of establishing yourself as an expert while also, I guess, personalizing it a little bit so that it's not so generic, that'll over time, I think, really make an impact. I mean, we've been working together since January. We're recording this in like mid-October 2023. I mean, I was at a conference back in July, and I can't tell you how many people came up to me, franchisors, franchise consultants. It was like an industry thing. They're like, dude, you're all over LinkedIn. Like every time I go to LinkedIn, I just see you. Like so that has really ramped up because of what you guys are doing. So it's not only everything John's mentioned already, it's also having a good strategy to make sure you're doing it consistently, but also the right way, putting out the right type of information that isn't going to just come off as spammy. And that's easier said than done.
Yeah. And I'll give everyone a really easy formula. Personal story plus business lesson is the content. Wes has tons of personal stories of his early days in franchising, mistakes he made that reveal a great business lesson, right? You told me some. I had you on my podcast recently, and you're like, "Oh yeah, man, I made this mistake and I made this mistake." Those are stories that make you relatable and empathetic and approachable. The other big thing with social media, and this is a lesson beyond LinkedIn, is we all want to feel like we can relate to the person we're going to do business with. Like I think that's something people forget with LinkedIn and everything else, is there's still a human being on the other end of that DM that has anxiety and fear and worry and self-doubt. And if you come across as this perfect, polished, you always have it all together, you've never made a mistake, and you have a Ferrari you're in front of, like, they're going to be like, well, he's too good for me. I can't relate. Or I don't want to,
or
work
it's
with him. He's
fake,
probably a
right?
fraud.
Or it's just going to look too good to be true.
Too good to be true.
One or the other of those, I think. So you mentioned a good point, like beyond LinkedIn. So, talk to us a little bit about, number one, why have you chosen, to make LinkedIn your primary focus for your clients? And then also, like, who should really be thinking about leveling up their LinkedIn game?
Yeah.
Who is this really going to benefit from a business owner standpoint?
Yeah, great questions. And it really comes down to who is your ideal prospect or client. If I was selling hairbrushes to teenage girls, I would not be on LinkedIn. I'd be on
all day.
TikTok, and Instagram is probably too boomer now. There's something called Visco, apparently. Like,
oh God, I haven't even heard of that one.
Like, I'm just glad I don't have daughters. I can't keep up with all the selfies
I've got
and everything.
2 of them, and it scares the hell out of me. The oldest is 6.
Sharpen your knives, get your shotguns. When the boys start coming around, like, be in the background.
Yeah. We might be going full Amish here in a couple of years. Just
I wouldn't blame you.
No
I think
Wi-Fi, no tech.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
daughters are just in closets.
Yeah.
But I mean, so here's the deal. LinkedIn is for you if you're trying to reach B2B type of leads, other
Okay.
business owners, other professionals. And here's why LinkedIn is such a gold mine. There's nearly 1 billion people on it. They add 2 new members every single second, 200 plus countries and territories around the world. Microsoft bought them back in 2018 for like $26 billion. Microsoft's not going anywhere. They're just pumping money into this thing. So it's growing, growing, growing. And there's no other platform that can rival it in terms of what LinkedIn is. It's a one-stop shop for professionals around the world. So they're all using it. They're all logging in. They're getting training. They're looking for jobs. They're joining groups. They're, doing work updates. Now, where it comes in handy as a lead gen tool is Microsoft and LinkedIn went big brother. So every single keystroke, every update, every piece of content you've ever published on that platform, Wes, they've indexed and categorized and saved and made searchable. So they've basically created this big ecosystem of anything and everything Wes has ever done. And for me as a marketer, I can go in and use LinkedIn Sales Navigator and their search features, and I can make an exact list of, I want to reach franchise consultants from North Carolina who went to school at Duke and who volunteer for Big Brothers Big Sisters and who have been a franchise consultant for at least 10 years. And it will spit out a list.
Yeah.
And then you have
get
these
very
ready-made
detailed.
icebreakers. Yeah. You have these ready-made icebreakers to talk to them and go, hey, unless LinkedIn's misleading me, it looks like you live in North Carolina and went to Duke. Do you still follow the basketball team? Hey, by the way, how's business? Are you looking for any tips? And instantly you can start building rapport. And you're doing the Dale Carnegie where using their profile, you're talking about their favorite topic on earth, which is themselves.
Yeah.
So
if you're listening to this podcast, then there's a good chance that you're looking to create more freedom in your own life. There's also a good chance that you realize that owning your own business can be a great way to take more control of your livelihood and create more of that freedom that we're all looking for. Also, if you've been listening to the show for a while, you realize that I specialize in franchise ownership. In addition to owning franchise businesses myself, I have a franchise consulting firm, Path to Freedom, where I help people navigate what is typically an overwhelming process of understanding franchising, identifying specific franchise companies that could be a fit, and then conducting the due diligence in a thorough and efficient manner with those franchise brands. My whole purpose here is to leverage my experience working for franchisors, owning franchises myself, and how we've been able to use that to create more freedom in our lives and help you determine if that could be a path that makes sense for you as well. So if any of this sounds interesting, if you've considered business ownership in the past, whether you've explored franchising specifically or not, I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to learn more about you and what it is that you're working towards in your life and determine if I may be in a position to help. A great starting point is the link below in the show notes, which will take you to a short form to fill out, and you'll receive a free copy of an ebook that I've put together, The 7 Steps to Freedom Through Franchise Ownership. That'll also get us connected, and I'd love to set up an introductory call where I can explain a little bit more about the process that I use to help people determine if franchise ownership could be a great way to start charting their own path to freedom. So click the link below in the show notes, receive the ebook, and let's get connected. I'd love to hear from you.
I have a great example of this from my early days when I was prospecting. So I was reaching out to lists of debt collectors, and this is how I got a $10,000 deal in 60 seconds. So that's the setup. I was basically looking at a guy's profile who's a debt collector. I'm like, God, how do I personalize my message? I don't want to just spam him with a meeting request. I saw that he went to the University of Pittsburgh in the 1980s. And I'm a huge sports fanatic, college sports, everything. I grew up in the 80s. I was like, what do I know about Pitt? The University of Pittsburgh in the 80s. I'm like, oh, Send It in Jerome. So if anyone who doesn't know this, Google Send It in Jerome and you'll see the story. But basically, Pittsburgh had a great basketball team in the 80s. And one of their star players, Jerome Lane, on a nationally televised basketball game, went up, dunked the basketball, and shattered the glass backboard. Just exploded, okay? And the famous basketball announcer, Bill Rafferty, has this call where the guy goes up and dunks, the backboard shatters, the crowd goes crazy, and he goes, "Send it in, Jerome, send it in," And so I looked at this guy's thing, and within 60 seconds was like, oh, he was at Pitt from 84 to 88. Jerome Lane made that dunk in 87. If nothing else, that will help me stand out by being like, hey, man, would love to connect. I see you went to Pitt. Do you remember Send It in, Jerome?
Unless the guy's a total nerd and he never watched any sports or anything.
But he was on campus, so certainly he at least heard about it, right?
True. Yeah, true.
And he writes back, and I kid you not, he writes back within a minute, I was at the game, and all of a sudden it's awesome. Like the Bruce Springsteen Glory Days is playing in the background. He's back in college, with his mullet in the 80s. And I was at the game. I played varsity soccer at Pitt, and I knew Jerome Lane. And all of a sudden we had context for a conversation. We had a connection.
Guards down.
And then he's like, and by the way, I looked at your profile, which is client facing, debt collection marketing services. I'd love to set up a call. We need some help with our website. $10,000 project, one call. And I remember that was, I was auditing my clients later that year, like, hey, why'd you sign up? Was it my marketing materials or this? He's like, no, Send It in, Jerome. He's like, I knew if you could personalize your lead generation that way with me, that you could do that for us. And that's,
it was similar when you reached out to me, and I don't remember exactly what your first message said, but it resonated. It caught my attention. And then, I think kind of like the strategies you're using for your clients on LinkedIn, you gave, some resources, some tips, some insight before you ever really asked for anything. And so in that, there were numerous of those things where I could just tell, like, you were doing things differently than the vast majority of other people. And none of that, before you and I actually got on a call live, convinced me that, this was going to be a good fit for me, but it at least got me to say, yeah, I'll set 30 minutes aside for this guy and hear him out. And I think that's what you're usually looking for, if you're prospecting on LinkedIn, especially if it's, I know you work with a lot of, business coaches and, people that are, I guess, higher ticket, type sales and real, kind of relationship, based transactions, I guess I would say. So, you mentioned something earlier about, with Microsoft acquiring LinkedIn and some of that. I mean, one of the things I'm real curious about is from 2012 to now, how have you and your team had to adjust with all of the just changes and updates with LinkedIn? Because, and I guess like the follow-up question to that is, like, from what how does LinkedIn really want their platform to be used? Are they okay with it being used as a prospecting platform? Because I know, like, especially during COVID, like, people just went nuts with the spamming. And I mean, there's all types of like bots and programs that you can plug in and hook up to your LinkedIn account and send out 500 connection requests a day, and it automates all the messaging. And like, they started, I heard of people getting their accounts frozen because they were just blasting out way too many connection requests and spammy messages. And I think it really dampened the user experience a little bit. So what does LinkedIn think about how you and your team are helping your clients, leverage LinkedIn for prospecting?
Yeah, I would start by saying, do they want you to use LinkedIn for sales? Well, what's their flagship premium program called? Sales Navigator. Like, they want you to use it for prospecting. The problem is LinkedIn is a little bit of Jekyll and Hyde, where they're like, they'll say to you on one end, just connect with people just be authentic, and then they're like, but here's a list of 10 million people, and here's Sales Navigator.
We'll sell you everyone's data, and you can have Sales Navigator.
Yeah. So they're like, what do you want? Like, to quote Gary Vaynerchuk, marketers ruin everything. So what's changed between 2012 and now is LinkedIn got really popular. And so it got very noisy. And so what I've seen over the years, and one of the other things that's a challenge with LinkedIn, is they're constantly adding and removing and changing features. They're kind of like, well, hey, the cool kids on TikTok are doing this. We'll add a short video format.
Yep.
That didn't work. Okay, we'll take that out. Well, the cool kids are doing carousels on Instagram. Okay, we'll add that. We'll take it out. Like, so they're constantly kind of trying to figure out their identity. And they
Yeah.
bought a company called lynda.com, and that became LinkedIn Learning. And they for a while they had a freelance marketplace to try to be like Fiverr. It's still around. It's
Oh,
called
okay.
ProFinder.
Huh.
There's all these features. They have groups, and here's what matters if you want to use LinkedIn. The money's in the mailbox. So it's in one-on-one messaging, kind of talking to people like a real human. And to your point, Wes, you got to lead with value. So what you got to do is you got to say what's changed between 2012 and today is the messages we write for clients have gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. And now they're literally one sentence. So
Yeah.
they're literally like, hey, Joe, came across your profile. I see you're a pharmaceutical sale. You've been in pharma sales for 20 years. Just curious, have you considered your next move? Any interest in a career pivot? And you stop. And then they're like, yeah, I'm kind of getting to the end of the road. I saw you're a franchise consultant. I mean, I've always wondered about that. Like, what's the deal? And then you'd be like, well, hey, I have a whole ebook on it. And so like, we literally, we still do one-on-one messaging, but it's one sentence to identify interest. So it's,
Yeah.
hey, curious, have you ever wanted free tips on blank? Have you ever considered X? And then let them respond. And then you say, or, hey, could I send you a free copy of my ebook, LinkedIn Lead Generation for Franchise Consultants? And if they say yes, then the content you send becomes currency. Content is currency to buy their time, interest, and attention, just like I bought yours, right?
Yep.
I literally wrote riches are in the niches. I wrote a book called LinkedIn Lead Gen for Franchise Consultants,
Yeah.
literally. Like
Yeah.
that's
And you sent, I remember reading it and thinking, okay, this guy understands what I do, because that's one of the issues I'd had with some of
right.
these other agencies was they didn't understand, exactly what a franchise consultant does, and also some of the challenges that are there for a franchise consultant, when it comes to investing money in lead generation and actually getting an ROI off of that, because my services are free to the individuals I work with. So if I were like a business coach charging, $10,000 a month for X number of hours to coach someone, like I put 10 grand this month into lead gen, you book me 30 appointments, I convert, 3 of them, I've got an ROI and I've got it pretty quickly. I'm not guaranteed any money for, the time I spend with people, which is great. I like the model. We talked about that on your podcast. My favorite thing about what I do is I don't have anything to sell to anyone, but it just makes the ROI calculations a little more difficult because it's a long process.
Big
Even if
time.
someone's moving quickly, if I connect with someone, there's an interest, there's motivation, they're ready to go. I mean, we're talking 3-4 months at the absolute quickest before there's money coming into me from a franchisor that I've placed someone with. It could be years though. I mean, I've got so many examples of people that I initially connected with and we kind of just, stayed in touch, worked together off and on over the course of 2-3 years. Timing's finally right, stars
Boom.
align, they come in. So the point I'm getting at is with that, when you sent me that ebook, I can remember reading it and being like, okay, this guy gets it, or at least has an understanding of kind of how my world works. And that was, I think, probably the big thing that got me comfortable with setting up a call with you.
That and me wearing Zuba's pants and having a popcorn bucket on my head. I mean, again, personal brand. I'm a walking dad joke. But see, that's what makes me unique, different, and
I
better.
love it.
I'm not a boring guy. Like I'm a goofball, as you can see on this call. And like that's the piece, like with Wes and your personal brand. You're sharing your family and you're sharing your vacations and like you're living your freedom lifestyle. Like path to freedom is a real thing for you. Like I'll be
Yeah.
talking to our team. They're like, well, yeah, Wes is over here doing this in like the Bahamas. I'm like, that son of a gun. But you've set up your business that way so you can. Like that's what's beautiful. And the thing I was gonna say about LinkedIn is really understanding with your content, demonstrating expertise and understanding to a niche audience. So they go, oh, he gets me. I don't have to explain. There's no learning curve. That's key, right? And then have you walked in my shoes? Do you really know what it's like to be me? And if you have, that works really well. And so I want to go back for a second to the messaging, because if you do nothing else on LinkedIn, client facing profile, make a list of your ideal prospects and do one-on-one messaging, and you'll make money. The key is, first, identify interest. Send one sentence, one question. Hey, should I send you a free copy of my ebook, LinkedIn for Business Coaches? Or should I send you a free copy of my ebook, How to Quit Your Day Job and Finally Have Financial Freedom? Whatever it is, right? And if they say yes, then you send the content. And the fortune's in the follow-up, to your point. And that's what we do for clients, is we have these huge Google Sheets and we chase and chase and chase, because you have to follow up 8, 10, 20 times. We had a guy, you'll love this story. So he's a business broker in Houston, Texas. We've worked with him for, I think, 6 months, and added all these new connections and all these new engagement, but he hadn't closed a deal yet. And he's getting nervous, and he's like, his extension was up, and I'm like, dude, we're so close, just trust me. And he's like, all right, we'll do, another couple months. I get a message today, $20 million deal. He gets 3% of $600,000. I'm like, woo! So he's like, I'll hire you guys for life.
Here's your ROI. Yeah.
From one random cold
you've
LinkedIn
got him
message.
for at least the next 5 years, and he's still
I
gonna
should
have
be good for a couple months.
Yeah.
But that's the power of LinkedIn messaging, because he was targeting business owners in Houston who want to sell a business. This guy has this incredible background doing that exact thing. He knows their world. We wrote all this content for him to get people to know, like, and trust him, and demonstrate his best tips for business owners who want to get a business ready to sell. One cold LinkedIn message, the timing was right.
Yeah. The other thing I would add to that too, and this will kind of, take us a little bit outside of LinkedIn, because, your team will, follow up with people to a certain extent, right? But, they're not following up 6 months later with someone, unless the person specifically said, hey, I might be interested, follow up with me 6 months from now. Yep. There's kind of a cadence to it, and then it kind of just falls off, which I think is the right approach. You don't want to, be pestering someone if they're, clearly not interested. But, the timing, and this will vary from one type of, I guess, business to the next, but the timing really has to be right, for the prospect. And so you need to also, in addition to a good LinkedIn strategy, you need to have I always think of it as an ecosystem that you're bringing that person into, that is going to allow you to stay in touch with them without having to continue to slide into their DMs on LinkedIn, right? So whether that's a newsletter, an email newsletter, or, a podcast, and you're, sending out emails periodically to, keep people updated with, new podcast episodes, or a YouTube channel, or whatever the case is. I always kind of look at LinkedIn as like one of the tops, or the top of one of my funnels, right? That the ultimate goal is to just get people into the Path to Freedom ecosystem, right?
Yes.
Ideally, if I can, get people on the phone as a direct result of the prospecting efforts on LinkedIn, that's great, right? But I know that not everyone that may have an interest is going to be ready, or the timing's going to be right when they get that message from me. So I think that's
go ahead.
I just say, to me, I think that's important for people to think through, is like, as great as LinkedIn is for a prospecting, you're probably going to miss out on a lot of really good prospects if you don't have this kind of ecosystem that you're pulling them into, that's going to just make it easier for you to stay in front of them.
Yeah. For example, I have all these niched ebooks that I give away, but it puts you into an email drip that follows up on the book and gives a free online course, and periodically free emails. And, I have a new podcast episode with this cool entrepreneur, Wes Barefoot. You need to go listen. I sent that out, I think, today. Right. So it's constantly, to your point, staying in front of people, being reminded, oh yeah, that guy. I've had people come a year or 2 or 3 later sign up. Like, you had a guy that, I'm taking credit for the sale, but you're like, well, yeah, I met that guy at a mastermind like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Kind of just whatever. And then we reconnected through you guys on LinkedIn. We rekindled. We started talking. the timing was right for him. Boom, he came in and bought like 6 franchises. And it was like,
Yeah.
they all kind of intermeshed. He was in your ecosystem to a degree. We had another touch point on LinkedIn to kind of reignite things,
the
right?
thing was, because I totally give you guys credit for that. We were in this, we still are in this like fitness and mindset mastermind together, but we'd never spoken.
Okay.
Right. So it was the LinkedIn messaging, and this is a good example of like it hit this guy at the right time.
Yes.
So, some of that's going to happen if you're, doing enough of it. But, he was in the final stages of selling a business that he and a partner had built into a very large business. And he's a relatively, young guy, early 40s. So he's like, what am I going to do next?
What's
And
next?
he'd been curious about franchising. So, I mean, talk about like that dropping into his lap at exactly the right time. But we get on the call having no clue that we had this connection through this mastermind group, and it came up probably 10 or 15 minutes into the conversation, but you could tell there was like instant credibility because of that. So anyways, it was cool. It was just kind of a random coincidence, I guess you could say, but no question that, I didn't get on the phone with that guy or wouldn't have been on the phone with him that early, had it not been for you guys reaching out to him via LinkedIn.
It's your ecosystem. It's like you're in groups, you got a podcast, you got videos, you got ebooks. It's like when we get you a lead on LinkedIn, we want to drop them in and get them hooked on your stuff because the timing's not always right, to your
Exactly.
point.
Yeah.
There will be people that are like, you know what? I can't even think about this till 2024. We'll make a note and follow up. And they'll be like, actually, I'm glad you followed up. I just got laid off. I got a huge severance and I don't want to go back and get a day job.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, there's no question that if you have a solid LinkedIn strategy, or are implementing a lot of these tips and tactics that you're recommending, you'll make money on LinkedIn, but you're also going to miss opportunities down the road if you don't have the kind of bigger ecosystem that you're funneling people into. So one thing I want to ask you about, because, clearly you guys are experts in LinkedIn. That's your primary focus with your clients. Number one, are you guys doing much, if anything, outside of LinkedIn for any of your clients where it makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, we've done stuff where it makes sense outside of it. So for example, we've done, YouTube channels and campaigns. We've done like done for you webinars. I mean, we've done logos and branding and websites and like to your point, like if a client says, hey, I want to build the ecosystem, then we can build it all. What I found out, just as any business owner knows, is why do people keep coming to me? Why do they want leads? They want LinkedIn and they want leads. So it's like, okay, come in through that door. And then I have all this other stuff we can do together. So we produce podcasts for some clients. We produce videos. Yeah, I mean, logos, like kind of the way I've set up my business is I have all these contractors around the US based that are high end. So like my graphic design guy, he does stuff for Martha Stewart, the New York Yankees. My video guy has done stuff for Netflix. He trained under Hans Zimmer for like music,
really,
what do they call soundtracks? So like I just poach the best talent I can find because I've obviously tried to build my brand as like a high-end hyper custom done for you, as opposed to someone in a third world country is just hammering LinkedIn. It's like
your team, everyone on your team that I've interacted with has been great. And I mean, I have a dedicated account manager, so I've got like one point of contact that I can go to, and she's great, stays on top of me to keep me on track.
She told me, she's like, if you're talking to Wes, tell him we've got.
I know I've always got to-dos, but
here's the problem, Wes Barefoot. Everyone listening, Wes is so successful and he's got so much. We're chomping at the bit to do more. We have all this low-hanging fruit on his LinkedIn account that he's like, yeah, I'm going to get to it. And he's like, oh, but I have these 2 successful businesses I'm running and I'm taking my family on a, to Mexico. Oh, sorry, Wes. Like, I'm sorry you're so damn successful. But
I think
how about us?
I think you're making it sound a little more glorious than it is. Basically my life is chaos, and a lot of that
Well,
comes from the
how many
three
kids you
kids.
have? You have
Three.
three young
Yeah.
kids. Like, yeah, you're lucky to be upright, buddy. So
Yeah.
I remember those days.
Oh yeah, and it's a blast, but it's I mean it's
And you run two
nonstop,
businesses
but
and you're a franchise consultant. So yeah, you got a
you
lot going
guys are
on.
cranking out so much content though. It has been. And I think the important thing too with this is, like, we've talked a lot about what you and your team are doing, right? But I think for me to really get the full value from it, like, I've got to put in the time and effort too. And in my opinion, this isn't just like, hey, I'm going to pay you guys some money, take it and run with it.
Mhm.
Right? Like,
Mhm.
it's really a partnership. And I've already, kind of alluded to the fact that part of why it's been so good for me is you and the team taking the time to get to know me and my story, and then relating that through these LinkedIn efforts. But I could have easily not put as much time into that. And I was talking to another franchise consultant that I know that I think signed up with you guys about the same time. And we had a conversation, and I don't want this to reflect poorly on you guys, but he's like, I haven't been getting as good of results, because I was kind of sharing my experience and my results. But then he went on to say, like, yeah, I didn't really read through any of the stuff that they put together. I just kind of okayed it all. And, like, I've kind of had my daughter, overseeing all of this for me. And, like, I think that's a big difference where, because all the content you guys are putting together for me, I mean, some of it's pretty extensive in terms of, like, newsletters that are very in depth and very thorough, and articles. And I like to go through and read those. And your copywriters would probably say that I come back with a fair number of edits or changes to those. But I think that's just important for people to understand. And in my eyes, this isn't like an easy button in terms of, like, hey, I don't have to do anything, right?
Yeah, what's really funny is for you don't even know this, but based I had you on my podcast the other day, and I wrote 4 new LinkedIn articles just based off the stories you told. So they're coming to you. Like, I wrote them, but they need your input because they
Yeah.
need you to go, yeah, you got that story right, or
Yep.
yeah, that's the story about what no one will tell you about franchising, that are the challenges and how to overcome them. But there's nuance in there that you have to correct me on,
Right,
and
exactly. And it's
then
the type of thing that the longer we work together,
right.
the less of that, will probably
Yeah.
have to happen, just because, of the experience working together. But I mean, don't get me wrong, you and your team are doing 90% of the work. You're certainly doing the heavy lifting, but my point is simply, I think I'm getting better results, and will continue to get better results than the person that, doesn't want to put in as much time, and is just going to,
Right.
get the article that you write and say, yeah, it's good, and not really look at it or not give you any feedback.
Yeah, it's like being it's like you kind of get, as a client, what I learned too is, like, you're irreplaceable. So the more of your time and input I can get, the better job I can do representing you. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So, like, if
Yeah.
you're like, oh, you're going to tell the story about the insulation place, let me dig up a photo of me falling through an attic because that'll go good with the status update. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, because that's an authentic photo and that'll resonate.
Yep.
People will be like, that's different than stock art. What's this? Why is Wes in an attic?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a story behind this. And so, those are the things, obviously, you know this and I know this, you win or lose based on client selection. And to your point, yes, the clients that do best with us put in the brain power to go, that's good, but here's how to make it better. Or I've got an idea. Or, hey, you'll say stuff to us like, man, I'm seeing a trend here. Can we do some messages on this trend? Yes. Okay. We didn't know that. Or, those are the ideas where it really gets exciting, because when you put in those little, nuances and flourishes, it's just like hiring someone to come paint my house. Like, I can be like,
Yep.
that's good, but could we do this? And I really want this mural to reflect that. And, rather than just your off the shelf kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as, like, you guys are an extension of my team, that I'm building out. So
Exactly.
I've got some guys that, are phenomenal with, video, and they edit and produce my podcast, and they're really kind of the architects of this ecosystem that that I'm in the process of building out. But I mean, outside of the podcast, I don't do anything for lead generation other than LinkedIn. So, you guys are like a key part of, this kind of team that I'm building out. And so it's got to be treated like a partnership in that regard, I think, in order for it to really work. But I know we're kind of coming up on time here. I guess the other question I would have for you, just to, make sure everyone can get something out of this, because, we've talked a lot about LinkedIn. You said early on, LinkedIn is really for anyone, that's in more of a B2B kind of prospecting. So, what advice would you share to, maybe a business owner that's not looking for that B2B client, right? I mean, think about the franchises I own, for example, right? Where, a lot of our customers are, residential homeowners, or,
Yeah.
like contractors or builders that are probably not hanging out on LinkedIn a whole lot. What have you learned over the years that might be applicable, to other business owners when it comes to prospecting and marketing, just not through LinkedIn?
Yeah, you mean if their audience isn't really active on LinkedIn, should they
Yeah.
still use LinkedIn? And if
No,
so,
not
how?
even necessarily should they
Okay.
still, like, what
Yeah.
do you have any tactics that are effective on
Yes.
LinkedIn that could
Yeah.
also be effective elsewhere if your audience is not on LinkedIn?
Yeah. I think what people are craving most is authentic connection. I think we are sick and tired of all the gurus and too good to be truers and guys in front of Ferraris on Facebook.
Yeah.
I think we want, I'm Wes, I'm a dad. Here's my kids. Here's my life. Here's mistakes I've made. Here's tales from the trenches. Here's lessons I've learned. If that's something that could be of value to you, I'm happy to share it. And I
Yeah,
think
I agree.
that's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and it's sharing your wisdom and expertise and solving, challenges and questions for people. I think one of the other pieces of advice I have is make it really simple. Make it super easy so that they can take it and it's a digestible, quick win, so I can feel momentum. For example, when I'm sharing the LinkedIn profile tips, anyone can go in and fill in one sentence, right? What I do, I help this audience get these benefits by providing that service. That's one sentence, but you feel a win, you feel momentum. I'm not asking you to rewrite your whole profile today or changing your headline. And I think the more you can kind of make your tips simple and digestible, and people feel momentum and feel good. And I think the other thing is just put more of you into your marketing.
Yeah.
Like, tell me stories about who you are, what you're passionate about. And then again, the formula is very simple. Personal story plus business lesson is the content. I have a whole book I give away for free. It's called Content Marketing Made Easy. We can link to it.
Okay.
That has all the formulas. But yeah, that would be my advice for sure.
Yeah, great advice. And I think the way the world's going, almost anyone should be, in addition to whatever their business or their job or profession is, building their personal brand in some way. So I think
Yes.
all of
Yes.
that applies as well. Well, man, so much good information here. I could, pick your brain for another 2 hours, but I know you've got stuff to do.
I have a prospect call in 2 minutes I forgot about. How's that, Barefoot?
All right, well, let's wrap this bad boy up then. Where
No,
can
I'm good. I'm good.
people?
Let's make them wait, Wes. Let's make the anticipation. I'm gonna get on this
Is
sales
that
call in
another
2 minutes,
is that
and
another strategy?
I'm gonna be like, do you know who I was talking to before this call? Like, this is kind of a letdown for me. I was talking to the 2009 social media intern for Hilton Garden Inn. I
No,
don't
man,
know
you
if you're
already got
familiar
my
with the
money.
individual.
Go sign another client. So where should people go if they want
Yeah,
more? I know we'll link website and where they can go to get some of your free resources and stuff. But also, I mean, you do a podcast, Nemo Radio, YouTube, Nemo TV. Where's the place you would point people if they kind of want access to everything that you and the
yeah.
team are doing?
Thank you. NemoMediaGroup.com. NemoMediaGroup.com has all the books free, all that right on the front page. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn, John Nemo. You can find Nemo on LinkedIn. Use the fish jokes. I don't mind. I'm used to it. And yeah, I would say those are the two places to go. Find me on LinkedIn. There's tons of free stuff there, and then NemoMediaGroup.com.
Awesome. John, you're the man. Thanks for everything. And good luck on that prospect call.
All right. Thanks. See ya.